Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and today we're going to be traveling to Valencia, California yet again for our full in-depth review of Viper. Viper, the Aero looping coaster, originally opened on April 7th, 1990 at Six Flags Magic Mountain as the tallest and fastest ride at the park. Speaking of those stats, of course, Viper is nearly 200 feet tall at a height of 188 feet. And it features a 171-foot drop as well, culminating in a speed of 70 miles an hour, all while traversing 3,830 feet of track, which features 7 different inversions, including 3 vertical loops, a batwing inversion with 2 separate moments of being upside down, and of course a finale of double corkscrews. And in addition to this, has a full duration of 2 minutes and 30 seconds. And an interesting fact about this ride is that it is the final of its kind, an Aero Mega Looper, which realistically takes that old Aero looping coaster style and doubles or even triples the size. Now we know what we're getting ourselves into, let's figure out how to get there. Viper itself is a pretty easy coaster to locate at Magic Mountain. It's one of the first coasters you'll see as you're walking toward the front entrance, right next to X2 of course. But as soon as you walk into that entrance, you're gonna take a slight right turn and then a left right at the fountain before heading up the base of the hill, and Viper will be the first coaster entrance on that pathway that you'll encounter. And to be honest, outside of Revolution and of course Full Throttle, this coaster is the easiest to get to within the park. Of course, this leads us into the queue itself, which is nothing really to talk about, just a bunch of switchbacks, at least in a covered portion, with some TVs playing the typical advertisements and commercials that you find at plenty of Six Flags parks. Soon you'll head up a stairway into the station itself, and you're ready to ride Viper. Before we ride, of course, we have to hop into the seats themselves and onto the train. These trains are made up of 7 different cars with 4 seats per car and 2 seats per row. So make sure whoever you're sitting next to will have your back and support you, at least emotionally, if you're not prepared for this harrowing ride. I will admit these seats are quite old now, so they aren't the most comfortable or ergonomic. And one thing I will say, especially as someone who's a little bit taller, leg room can be a bit of a struggle on these roller coaster trains. But of course that restraint is an over-the-shoulder restraint, which does feature little handlebars that you can grab onto. But I will admit, when sitting down in this type of train, it's definitely showing its age a little bit, especially in comparison to rides like Twisted Colossus and things like Tatsu. Alright, we've sat down, we're all strapped in, let's head up that massive lift hill. The first thing you'll notice on this lift is it is quite a bit slower than most of the chain lifts in the park, but I personally love that. It gives you a great amount of time to look around and also prepare yourself for that intense first drop especially. Once you finally find yourself cresting over that ginormous hill, you'll be diving to the left 171 feet down in one of the craziest first drops I can think of. In the front row, it's not too bad. until you get toward the bottom. Now in the back, you'll get whipped across, and I will not lie, there are some incredibly intense lateral forces that you'll experience at random points going down this drop, which is a big reason I can see some people complaining about roughness, and we'll get into that even more later on in the layout. Immediately following this, you'll start heading up and be vaulted into the tallest vertical loop on the ride, and what I believe was the tallest vertical loop in the world, or I guess I should say highest vertical loop in the world at the time of its opening. And if you are sitting in the front, this is definitely going to catch you off guard with how forceful it can be right before you finish the loop and hit some trim brakes, which will slow you down just a little bit. Following this, of course, is a 180-degree left banked turn, which you will experience some pretty crazy lateral forces, potentially pushing your head into that over-the-shoulder restraint. Following this, of course, is 2 more forceful vertical loops, which can get some people starting to feel a little nauseous. But man, for me, it packs an awesome punch going back to back like that. Soon after, you'll be heading upward a little bit into that mid-course brake run where you will slow down and take a small breather after your good couple moments of sheer intensity. But I won't lie, if you're sitting toward the front, again, you'll get a nice pop of airtime, believe it or not. Following an awesome view of X2 for a couple of seconds, you'll start banking to the left pretty slowly before banking to the right and going into that batwing element. On certain parts of the train, you will definitely be getting some incredible hang time, followed by some crazy positive G's and back to hang time again. And in the middle of this batwing, of course, is where you will get your picture taken, so make sure you're looking up to the top right. Now, I won't lie, entering and exiting this element is going to be quite shaky and rough, so do be prepared for that. Although, it is not as shaky or rough as this next element right after the batwing. This is where you'll encounter some more trim brakes, which will slow you down a little bit, but the banking's not exactly perfect. You will get a sheer moment of lateral G-forces to the right, which if you don't realize it's on its way, it will be a shock and not exactly a good one. Following this though, you'll bank right into those double corkscrews, and I gotta say this is a fantastic moment of hang time, although entering them especially can give you a little bit of head banging. And if you thought though that mid-course brake run was the only breather portion of the ride, next up you'll encounter a piece of straight track before diving underneath the lift hill to the left, encountering some laterals, turning up and right into the brake run. You'll soon follow around the little curvature there into the station, and there is your ride on Viper, all complete. You'll grab your stuff from the bins on the opposite side of the station, which are free of course, head down a little stairway and past your photo booth, but after witnessing your picture of either you smiling or screaming, you'll walk down a little pathway and find yourself near the entrance yet again. Now, here's the question. Are you going to keep riding, or are you going to something else? Oh, Viper, I personally really adore this ride. I won't lie though, I know a lot of people seem to dislike this ride with a passion, and I mean a real distaste for this roller coaster. I have plenty of friends and family that adore this ride and think it's one of the best coasters at the park, but I also have friends and family that think I'm an insane masochist for loving this roller coaster. Now, I will not lie, this roller coaster can have its little bits of bumps that I will admit, if you're a little bit on the shorter side, may end up hurting your ride experience a little bit more than someone like me. Being at 6 foot tall, my head and neck thankfully clear that over the shoulder restraint, so I never have any problems of head banging or anything like that. The only issue I have is maybe a little bit of tightness on my collarbones, but that's not something that's going to ruin my ride experience like my girlfriend's ride experience on Viper, where her head was perfectly in between the shoulder restraints, and by the end of the ride her ears were pink from the hitting back and forth. So I would definitely keep that in mind when it comes to roughness on this roller coaster. But if we're just going off of my opinion alone, I actually enjoy a little bit of that jankiness. It's not perfect by any means. You can tell that a lot of this track was hand bent, just like the Matterhorn at Disneyland, or Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point, or even the original Corkscrew up now at Silverwood. For me, that adds a lot of charm and also adds in a little bit of surprise every now and then when something does not feel exactly like you would expect. And I personally prefer something like that on any ride. That's why I like Gold Rusher a lot more than most people might think. And I won't lie, Viper itself, at times, has been one of my favorite looping coasters ever, and I really mean that, especially when it's running real fast. It can give you some really intense moments where I've almost grayed out entirely, or even add in moments where you're just sitting there contemplating life because you're not sure exactly what's happening. If I had to choose a team though, love or hate, I'm definitely love all the way. And in terms of my favorite and least favorite moments, or favorite seats and least favorite seats, I gotta say my favorite moments on this ride are, of course, that first drop and the first loop, followed by that left-hand turn and the vertical loops immediately after. Sure, it's incredibly simple, at least in today's standards, but there's something about it that I just find myself smiling and laughing at how crazy it is, even though on textbook thought, it is incredibly simplistic. Now, my least favorite part of the ride is probably that little bit of trim brakes right before the corkscrews. That just honestly hurts almost everybody on the ride. I won't lie about that. And I will say I don't really have a least favorite seat on this roller coaster. I prefer pretty much sitting wherever, except I will say my favorite spot is most likely the front row. I love the back on this ride too, but front row gives you that view, that sense of speed, especially at 70 miles an hour, and you get some airtime moments even with some more intensity in some of those loops. So with all of that said, let's move on to my rating system. Now, if you haven't seen one of these before, I highly recommend checking out all the reviews I've done in the past, but I have an unorthodox rating system. I'm gonna go through and rate this ride on a ski slope scale, pretty much letting you know how experienced of a rider you should be before checking out Viper itself, and giving you a star rating on fun and intensity. That all leads into, of course, a score out of 10, which is just the overall rating for this roller coaster, at least in my personal opinion. So first, I'm definitely going to give this ride a black diamond. That's pretty high up there. This is for experienced riders. This definitely should not be your first roller coaster. I would definitely not recommend that at all. And to be completely honest with you, I might even put this up to potentially a double black diamond. It's almost teetering on that edge with some of the rides I've gotten in the past, especially with a little bit of those bumps added in there, making it for a little bit more of an intense ride. Moving on to the star rating, I'm definitely going to say 4 stars for intensity, but I'd honestly say probably more like 4.5 is a better idea of where this ride sits for intensity itself. Moving on to fun though, immediately after that, this is where it gets really tricky. I personally have a lot of fun on this ride, and I would probably put it up in the 4-star range, but that's not what it's meant for. This coaster is meant to be intense more than everything else. I mean, it's not like a full throttle, where yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's more fun than intense, if that makes any sense at all. The main focus of Viper is to scare you and make you feel like it is, for a lack of better term, the ride of your life. So with that all said, I think I'm gonna head toward a 3-star rating for fun, although 2-star might be able to fit other people's descriptions more. For me, I think it's 3 stars though. And in terms of what ride you should check out before this roller coaster, well, if you're a beginner at Magic Mountain, definitely check out things like Gold Rusher, New Revolution, even Ninja, and I would even recommend Riddler's Revenge or Full Throttle before checking out Viper, just because Viper's a little bit more intense. Heading to my overall score out of 10, though, this is where it's also teetering on a line. Now, for this, I will say a majority of my rides are definitely an 8 out of 10, but I will admit, there's a couple rides that I've had on Viper where I would have pushed it up to a 9 easily. So do keep that in mind. I know some of my friends have it ranked even above where I do. But if I had to go with an overall score out of 10 for a majority of my rides, it would definitely be an 8. So with all that said, I'm very interested to see what you guys think of Viper. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you love it just like me, or do you absolutely despise it with every fiber of your being? I know you're out there, so make sure to comment below what your thoughts on Viper are. And of course, if you have not yet, make sure to subscribe. We're going to have more Magic Mountain reviews in the next couple of weeks, followed by Knott's Berry Farm reviews in the new year, which is going to be absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to start working on those fairly soon. And if you would like to support the channel even more, make sure to go check out our pins down in the description below. I would really appreciate it. But of course, until next time, we'll see you on the next ride.